Pilot Boys in the building. Let's go.
Pilot Boys, we get on up. We the fly boys, we getting up.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. We are here with a very special guest, former NFL standout and Super Bowl champion, Lance Moore. What's up, man? How you doing?
Well, good, man. Just going through this new normal that is quarantine. My daughters are actually up north with my in-laws, so a little bit of peace and quiet around the house. Never hurt anybody, so it's perfect. You know, I don't have any. Nobody's busting in my office door today, so should be good.
Micah forgot to mention the most important thing on your resume, which is Toledo Rocket.
Oh, yeah.
Toledo Rocket. That's right.
We're definitely going to get to that. We're definitely going to get to that. So let's jump right into it, man. You have an awesome story. Obviously, you're from Columbus and went to Westerville South, which was I went to DeSales, and the year we won the state championship, the only team that beat us that year was Westerville South. So Westerville South has obviously a rich history in football. So talk a little bit about that. Just before we jump into some of your more professional stuff, talk a little bit about your experience in Westerville, growing up in Westerville, and actually football at Westerville South.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up on the east side of Columbus. I was a city kid, basically up until high school. I went to Sherwood Middle School, and then I went to Monroe Middle School for eighth grade. And we moved to Westerville because my mom's sister, they lived in Westerville, and our cousins went to Westerville South. So my mom's like, I would love for us to be able to kind of make the move up there and safer schools. I think most people would say better schools.
Right.
And for me, I would go to Westerville South football games kind of when I was younger because my cousins went there. I mean, they didn't play football, but I would, I got to see Andy Katzenmoyer play in person. And even back in the Kajana Carter days, I would go to a game or two because that was where my family lived, and that was like the big game in town. So I understood kind of the history. The Katzenmoyer team went to the state championship, lost against St. Ignatius, but that was kind of really the start of what will become, modern day Westerville South, which is basically a Division I football factory. There's guys that from all positions. I mean, from the linemen to linebackers to skill players. And for me, I mean, I was a martial artist growing up. Like I was a karate guy and played a little soccer. I was a karate kid. My dad actually still owns a dojo on the east side of Columbus. Kind of. I guess it's more Whitehall now than it used to be. But yeah, I mean, we grew up in the dojo, so we were martial artists, and we played t-ball and soccer, and we did gymnastics. And football was kind of like the last sport that my younger brother and I started playing, and it was a sport that I feel like we loved more because we didn't play it super early.
I got you.
And then I get to Westerville South, and I had played when I first started playing football. I played quarterback and safety, and then I got moved to receiver, so I played receiver and safety. And, I didn't literally football. You don't catch a lot of balls, at least back then.
Now it's different. Right.
So I get to Westerville South and I'm like, man, this is freshman football. We're probably not going to be throwing the ball a lot. I play running back. So I signed up to play running back. Right. And the very first day of freshman practice, we were doing all the drills. And obviously, everybody's in shorts. Nobody knows really, especially a kid that transferred in. Nobody knew who I was. This was like my first experience in Westerville school-wise because school didn't start for, another couple of weeks. This is camp. So, go through the drills. And then the very next drill after like the quarterback, running back, ball handling drills was, we're just going to put everybody out at receiver. And we're going to see who can catch these passes. Right. And we all ran one slant, receivers, tight ends, running backs. I was the only one that caught the slant. And the coach said, you play receiver now. I was like, hey, took my shot away. But
you should have dropped it on purpose, man.
If I would have known any better, I probably would have. But I don't know. I don't know if the story ends up the same way if I don't.
It does.
Get out there at receiver and stay at receiver the rest of the time. Had a fun freshman year. I caught one ball the entire year, which I guess that one ball that I caught in practice is foreshadowing. Then sophomore year I played JV, played in a couple varsity games, but wasn't doing anything regular out there. But junior year was when I started being a regular guy and got a little bit of recognition after the season. But the senior year is kind of when it took off. I mean, we didn't have a quarterback. This is the 2000 season. Didn't have a quarterback, and Coach Pintello, who is a legendary coach in Ohio. He's in the Ohio High School Football Hall of Fame. I mean, a guy that still to this day is, I consider, like one of my father figures, and it was always bigger than football with him. And I really think he took a liking to, obviously, the black kids, but specifically the kids that didn't have a lot of money, because that's how he grew up. He grew up super Italian, no money, kind of hustle and grinded for everything that he got. So he kind of took us under our wing, especially those of us who either didn't have fathers around or fathers were kind of in and out. And that was even before I was like balling. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make sure my best players are okay. Like he did that with all of the guys. I mean, he took the time to kind of get to know guys and their family situation and really did more, I think, than what most coaches would do. And he's a guy that I love to death. And
so let me ask you this: how and when in the process did you start to know, and maybe this was through discussions with your coach that you're talking about too, that you had the talent to play at the next level, and even start thinking about Division I football and maybe even NFL dreams? When did that start?
I think my junior year, Brandon Joe was our running back, Ohio State running back, Mr. Everything in Ohio before he got hurt that season. So having him on my team the year before I was going to come out helped me as far as recruiting goes, because they weren't coming to see me. They were coming to see, everybody's coming to see Brandon.
Same thing happened to me. Yep.
100%. I mean, that's kind of, you get a little bit lucky by that. And I definitely, I would say I reaped some of the benefits of that. I started getting letters and stuff like that, but nobody was offering me my junior year. I mean, I had okay numbers, but nothing like, I wasn't jumping out on tape for anybody, really, I wouldn't think. Well, I think back then I was good enough, but, it didn't happen that way. You got something?
I was going to say, when did you start developing your confidence? Like, because the most important variable here is your belief in self, right? Where those doubts left your mind and you said, you know what, I'm one of the best players in the state. I'm going to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably the summer going into my senior season. We had our team camp right as the junior school year was ending. And I was playing quarterback again. Coach Pintello said, "Hey man, we don't have a quarterback. You're my best player. I need you to play quarterback." And I'm just thinking like, oh man, like I'm not gonna be throwing 5,000 yards. I'm going to be running the dive option, and hopefully I don't get killed. But I was just like, whatever. He said I'm the best player. I got to help do whatever it takes to win. And a couple weeks into the summer, he's like, man, I'm going to try to get you a quarterback. My cousin is a quarterback at Bishop Reedy High School. He was All-State the last 2 years, and let's see if they'll move up here and he'll come play, Division I, and he'll be the quarterback that we've needed. And at first I'm like, man, why wasn't this All-State quarterback our quarterback the last 2 years? Like, why would you wait? Why would you wait until now when we don't have a quarterback? Because obviously he was All-State, but that's another story. So he comes in the summer. We're doing 7-on-7 camps, and we are literally obliterating everybody, because we always had skill guys. We just didn't have a quarterback, or we had skill guys and a quarterback, but we didn't have a line. So that, the quarterback was getting killed. So now we finally have skill guys all over the field, and we have a quarterback that's obviously he's seasoned, but he's already first team All-State 2 times. So we were every single time, Rocky Pintello.
Oh, okay.
Rocky Pintello. Same name. And they thought it was his son, which his son, it was Rocco Pintello, who came a few years later. But, he came, and it literally changed everything, obviously for our team, but really everything for me, because I already knew that I was good, but I didn't know I could be that good until he came. And that basically solidified everything that we wanted to do. And he broke a bunch of state records. I broke a bunch of state records that year, and there was no doubt in my mind that I was good enough to play Division I. But at that point, I was like, well, am I going to get a scholarship? Because I got no offers the whole senior season, no offers during basketball season. Then it gets to like 2 weeks before graduation, and I was scheduled to walk on at Ohio State. I mean, I'm a Columbus kid, whole family went to Ohio State. My cousin Gary Berry, DeSales alum.
So that's my dude. I didn't know Gary was your cousin. That's my
GB
dude.
is my cousin. Yeah, GB is my cousin. So like,
crazy.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to go earn it on campus. And you know, I mean, Columbus guys, you dream of playing at Ohio State. I tell people all the time, there's a lot of Browns fans nowadays. There's a lot of Cavs fans. But the professional football team in Ohio is Ohio State. Like they play college football, but they are the pro team. They are the biggest thing in our entire state. And as a Columbus kid playing football, the dream for me was always I want to be a Buckeye. I mean, that was what it was, and it became kind of like a goal of mine. Like, okay, they don't want to give me a scholarship, then I'm gonna go earn a scholarship. And not only am I gonna earn a scholarship, but I'm gonna play at Ohio State. Like, I know that I'm gonna play. But two weeks before I graduated, Akron calls on a Tuesday, offers me. Wednesday, Eastern Michigan offers me. Then that Thursday, Toledo offered me. And so all in a 3-day span, when I hadn't gotten an offer the entire year, I had 3 offers and basically had to make the decision. Do I want to go pay and go to Ohio State and be working on the side to pay for school because we didn't have any money? Or am I going to take this scholarship and get a free education and probably be able to play right away? So I chose Toledo because I felt like it was the best opportunity.
Yeah. And V's from Toledo, so I'm sure that makes him happy.
I mean, especially back then, Toledo was transitioning into this, I guess it's the modern day, like pass happy, spread it out, throw the football 30 to 40 times a game.
And was Bruce Grakowski the quarterback?
Bruce was my quarterback. We came in the same class. He redshirted, I didn't redshirt, but he ended up being my guy my junior and senior seasons. And
that was huge. That's got to be huge for you to have a quarterback that had that ability at that level, because especially for a receiver, one of the things that you kind of fear, I guess, when you go to maybe a smaller school, so to speak, is that you may not have the quarterback, just like the same thing you talk about in high school, that's going to be able to get you the ball. But Bruce, I mean, he was throwing the ball 40 times a game.
He made it to the NFL, so
yeah, I mean that's a huge part. He played 11 years in the NFL, and I guarantee you a lot of people don't realize that. But I always tell people in camps or wherever I'm talking to parents about youth football, I say if your kid is a receiver and they don't have a quarterback, then it's going to be tough sledding for them. Exactly. And it transitions to every single level. Stage. NFL scouts are on a different level, right? So if they see a guy, the first name that comes to my mind that didn't have, I guess, the greatest numbers in college, but became probably a Hall of Famer in the NFL is Calvin Johnson. He played in that run first triple option offense at Georgia Tech. Right. And, you know, I mean, he probably had 30 catches for like 900 yards or something like that. But still, he didn't have like the gaudy 100, 110, 120 catches. Right. So like the scouts are on a different level. But it's harder, I think, for college coaches, I guess, or the recruiting coordinator to look at a film and see a kid catch 1 or 2 balls and be like, you know what, this guy would be a great fit in our offense. I feel like it's a lot harder for them. But I guess nowadays it's a little easier because of technology and the access that they have to kids. Right. But that's definitely important.
And when did you realize? Go ahead, B.
I have one other question about that. Like going to Toledo, right? Like I think everyone hears the names Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, but there are a bunch of schools like Toledo where a lot of guys have gone on to NFL careers from not just Toledo, but from the MAC. Why do you think that transition at a smaller school like Toledo versus Ohio State, how do you think that benefited you just from the fact that you got on the field earlier, you got to play more, you got to see other talent? Why do you think these smaller schools produce so much NFL talent?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's your mentality, right? Like you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder right when you get on campus because you thought that you should have been at an Alabama or an Ohio State or an LSU. But you know what? I'm at Toledo. So like that was definitely something that I thought about when I got to campus. Like, man, every single day I'm like, I'm going to kill these dudes. I don't care who it is that's out there. Like I'm going to make sure. And it wasn't that I was mad at Toledo. I was thankful and appreciative of the opportunity. But in my mind, I was talking about basically all the people that passed on me. Yeah. And it's like, I always I always wanted, I'm like, dang, hopefully in a couple of years we schedule Ohio State. Because I was like, I want to play at Ohio State so I can show them what they missed on, what they passed on. So you have a little bit of an edge to you when you get there. And for sure, I got an opportunity to play early because I went to camp and it was all business. Like Rocky walked on at Toledo with me. One day in the freshman camp, he's like, I'm out. I'm like, what? He's like, I didn't get any reps. I said, you're the last guy on the depth chart. You were a late addition as a walk-on, basically as a favor to me, because I begged them to let you come on, you know?
Right.
So as soon as he left, my head was in the book. I wasn't doing any socializing. I had a room all to myself as a freshman, which is kind of unheard of because my freshman roommate left me. So I just right away, I was like, I'm going to learn this whole offense before anybody else. I'm going to know all the positions. I'm going to make sure that I take care of myself physically so that when it comes time for me to get reps, that I'm ready. And, you know, I got an opportunity to play early on because there was a couple guys that got hurt. I didn't have the numbers that I wanted. I didn't get the touches that I wanted, but I did get that experience that I think would help propel me into the next several years at Toledo. And I think, you know, to your question about the MAC producing talent, I think there's always a situation where there's guys that kind of fall through the cracks. Yeah. You know, the big schools can't get everybody because at the end of the day, everybody isn't playing at those big schools. Right. There's still only 11 guys on offense and 11 guys on defense for every single team. Yeah. And so I think that's what a cool thing about the modern day, the transfer portal in college football. I think that's great. I think that's something that should have been around forever, where a guy just isn't getting his opportunity and says, you know what, I'm leaving. Because a lot of times these schools promise kids opportunity and they never get them. And they stockpile talent. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah. And then your eligibility can run out too. So, and this window of time is very, very small. So a lot of people will say, oh, you're just a quitter. If you're not getting your time, you should stick it through. And it's like, okay, that could be true in certain situations, but a lot of situations, the clock is running from the second you get there. And if you know you're good enough to go play somewhere else and you have a dream of playing, obviously, beyond that professionally, man, you got to go do what's best for you. So I agree with you 100%.
And also, I think you brought up a very, very valuable point, which is I think early on in anyone's career, it's important for people to doubt you, right? Or to feel like you're doubted. I feel like a lot of the talents that we hear about from a very, very young age, the hype train gets so big that they fall into that hype versus having an enemy, for lack of a better word, or someone that's testing you. And I think what you said there was very, very important.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's. I guess you can fall in love with the praise that you get, and it can somewhat paralyze you, right? And I always say, like, my NFL career I don't think it ends up the way that it does if I'm a first round draft pick.
Right.
Now, it might. I don't know that my mentality would have totally changed, but I think, you know, being an undrafted guy, there was never any time where I could say, you know what, I made it. Even after I signed a big deal, I couldn't say, you know what, I made it. Because I knew and I understood they're going to try to replace me. So they might not try to replace me now.
Let's talk about that too. The transition from, you know, out of Toledo and to now you're, you know, want to go into the NFL, and the whole process of being undrafted and wondering whether you're going to get drafted and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a bit about what that process was like, and then how you actually ended up on the Saints, which I think you probably view yourself as a Saint, even though you played for other teams. You probably view yourself as a Saint.
For sure. Well, like, you know, I guess I didn't mean to get off track, but just to finish that Toledo thing, you know, I became a full-time starter my junior year. I led the country in catches my junior year. I was first team all conference that year. I thought about leaving early, but there was a coach who kind of will remain nameless, who was really pissed off when I told him, or when he heard that I was thinking about testing my draft stock, which looking back now, like, it really kind of infuriates me, because I'm like, why would a coach who's there to help get the best out of me and should be thinking about the best things for me, why would he be pissed off that I'm – And what I didn't say I was leaving. You know, I just wanted to see, wanted to see, okay, if I were to leave, where would I land in the draft? You know, and you know, I don't know. I just don't understand.
If you can't trust those people as a player or as a student, then that's a major problem.
Yeah, I don't understand self-serving coaches, right? Like coaching, for me, you get out of it what you put into it. And what you put into it should be the energy to get the best out of your kids and help them make the decisions that are the best for them. It's not about you. It's not about me as a coach, right? If I'm a coach and my guy goes on to the NFL, that's going to look good on me.
Well, I hate to say this, but I feel like capitalism corrupts in a lot of different ways. And this is one of the effects of that is like, especially in coaching, right? It's like your job is tied to the output that on the field. Nobody wants to necessarily hear your excuses and all that type of stuff. So when your best player, especially at a smaller school, when you're not necessarily, they're not mad Lance Moores coming through Toledo. You know what I'm saying? And not to say that there aren't talented players, but you understand what I'm saying. So when you have a top talented player like that that's about to leave, that is a jolt to their selfish interests. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's what starts to happen when you start to let capitalism dictate every single thing and let, instead of, you said like the development, that's the type of thing that they should be measured on. But a lot of times it's about, did you win or did you lose? And if you didn't, you're out of here, So that creates terrible incentives for them.
And like to take it to another level, in a school like Toledo, most of those guys are using Toledo as a springboard, right? So if one of your best weapons is leaving the school, then your offense might not be as good the next year. You might not get that job from Iowa or Penn State or wherever that you're trying to, move up. So, that was an unfortunate thing. And I took the time to really think about it. I didn't let him make the decision for me. But I did kind of pull back a little bit once I heard how disappointed he was. It just kind of like, well, that's weird. So I go back to senior year, first team all conference, honorable mention All-American, first team academic All-American.
Nice.
I was invited to 2 All-Star games. I was invited to the combine, and the fourth quarter of the Motor City Bowl, get tackled, land on my elbow, dislocate my shoulder, tear my labrum. And from there, it's like, well, shoot, like I either have to have surgery or I'm going to try to rehab this thing and go to the NFL. Yeah. So the agent that I was talking to around that time, who I ended up signing with, he's like, it's up to you. Like, if we'll support you if you want to try to do the rehab thing, or if you want to get it fixed, you just have to realize if you get it fixed, you're not going to be able to play in these all-star games. You're not going to be able to compete at the combine, and you're not going to be your normal self by the time your pro day is around. I said, that's fine. I would rather take care of it now and not let that be a lingering issue as I'm trying to make an NFL roster, regardless of whether I get drafted or not. Because I realized at that point that I wasn't going to be a first-round draft pick, right? It usually doesn't happen for I always use Antonio Brown as an example. Antonio Brown and I kind of went back and forth in college. He was a lot younger, but like in the game against him, I would always say, like, that dude's going to go in the NFL. He's going to play in the NFL. And I knew as soon as I got to the NFL, I'm like, he's going to play in the NFL. He ended up being a 6th-round draft pick. So, you usually the max skill guys aren't top 10. They aren't first rounders just based on all the other guys from the bigger conference, all the guys that are bigger physically, all the guys that are running 4.2s and 4.3s nowadays. And that's just the nature of it. I mean, it's not right, but that's just kind of how it is. So, I ended up going undrafted. The Browns, the Bengals, and I think the Bills were like the 3 teams kind of hot on me after the draft. My agent and I spoke a couple of times. I'm like, look, man, I think Cleveland is the best opportunity. Let's do it. So go to Cleveland. And at that point, I kind of was just happy to be there, to be honest. I still worked hard, but it was just like what I had been through the last several months, like just to get there and get the opportunity was exciting for me. We had just drafted Braylon Edwards from Michigan, 3rd overall in that draft. So I knew I had my work cut out for me to be another rookie guy to make that team. Josh Cribbs was a rookie with us as well. I feel like I played well all summer, played well in training camp. Preseason games get around. I played in, I think, 11 plays in 3 preseason games. So I knew the writing was kind of on the wall at that point. Like, I'm not going to make the team in the last preseason game. I just knew. And the rosters had to get trimmed before that last game anyway. So come in that Monday or Friday or whatever day it was after that 3rd preseason game, sure enough, I get cut. They say, hey, if you could stick around, that'd be great, because we're thinking we're going to, try to put you on our practice squad. I'm like, I'm from Columbus. I'll see you guys when you call. You know, like I'm going home. I'm not going to sit here in a hotel.
Right.
And the crazy thing is, I never heard from the Browns again. Like after that,
Wow.
so I don't know if they were like upset that I said I was going 2 hours away, or if they just had other roster moves that they had to make.
If they were just being the Browns.
Before that, yeah, there's always that. A lot of people always say, man, like, thank goodness you didn't stay with the Browns. Like, you probably wouldn't have had the same career. I said, well, I definitely wouldn't have had the Super Bowl, but you know,
you would have made fun with a lot of quarterbacks, though.
Oh my goodness, man! Like I realize now, like how fortunate I was in my career to get cut by the Browns. I mean, I get cut by the Browns, and then I end up playing with Drew Brees, and then I end up playing with Ben Roethlisberger, and then Matthew Stafford, and then even my one practice in Atlanta, I was there with Matt Ryan. So, like, all of these guys, I think people would say we're better than Trent Dilfer and we're better than Charlie Fry, even though Charlie Fry was my guy, you know. But that's just I was very fortunate. So I get cut. And I go back to Columbus, and I'm really like, what do I do? I had the Toronto Argonauts own my rights up in the Canadian Football League. I had them calling me, hey, come up here. And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna wait a little while and kind of see what happens with the NFL. I had a workout with the Houston Texans the following week. Went well. They didn't sign me. They didn't sign the other receiver that was there either. They were just kind of doing their due diligence, which I would find later in my career is a normal thing for teams to just bring guys in and work them out. You know, I was thinking I was going there to sign with the Texans. You know, but I didn't know any better. So I ended up re-enrolling at Toledo and kind of taking on like a graduate assistant position, even though I hadn't graduated yet. So basically, they put me back on scholarship. I had to help coach in order to get my scholarship check, and I would, keep taking classes to try to graduate. And 3 weeks later, we're flying from Toledo to play Fresno State. It was like a Tuesday night game, and we land, and one of the coaches kind of like runs to my seat. And I'm like, what's wrong with this dude? He's like, have you talked to your agent? I said, no, we just landed. Like, he's like, have you talked to your mom? I'm like, no, I'm not one of those dudes that flies and calls my mom as soon as I land. He's like, call your mom. So my mom's like, hey, the Saints, call Dave. My agent's name is Dave. Call Dave. So I called Dave, and he's like, yeah, they want to bring you on the practice squad. And I'm thinking, like, we never even heard from the Saints. Like, not around the draft, not before the draft. He said apparently they had a scout that was at the inter squad Brown scrimmage right before the first preseason game. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I had to fly from Fresno, California to San Antonio because we were displaced because I was at Hurricane Katrina season. Oh, okay. And I get to San Antonio. All I have is a backpack with one sweatsuit, my toiletry bag, and that was it. I mean, because I was literally flying from Toledo to Fresno and Fresno back, so I didn't pack all my stuff. So I get there, and Jim Haslett was the coach at the time, and I remember to this day, I got my physical. The scout drove me over to the Alamo Dome because that was where our facility was earlier in that season. And he's like, here's Coach Haslett. Hey, Coach Haz, how you doing? He's like, are you ready to play corner? I'm like, oh, wow. What? He's like, are you ready to play corner? And I said, yeah. And he's like, good. Because you're on the practice squad now. You're going to play wherever we put you. You're still going to be a receiver, but I need to let you know that you're going to be a practice squad corner, and you're going to be a practice squad holder, and you're going to be on all the special teams and practice squad drills. And I said, whatever you want me to do, because at this time I started to realize whatever it takes. Like, I don't care. Right. I wanted to return punts and kicks in Cleveland. I didn't get any opportunity. But looking back, had I been a coverage guy, I might have gotten an opportunity. So I knew that I was going to take advantage of this opportunity with my experience and my knowledge that I gained over that training camp and that summer with the Browns to kind of help give me a better opportunity. And from that day on, it was like the mentality switched back. Like, I'm gonna kill these guys. Like, it wasn't that I didn't have it in Cleveland. It's just I almost felt like my previous success was going to give me more opportunity in the NFL, and I was way wrong. I mean, that had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, and hearing your kind of story as you've told it it's like, I think you made a lot of very, very smart and sound decisions, right? Because especially as an undrafted guy, you, like you said, you could have done anything in your power to stay in Cleveland just to keep that NFL job. And that's what a lot of guys do. But you made the decision to say, you know what? if you want me to sit in a hotel room, I'm not going to stay in a hotel room. If you want me, you'll come get me. And also then going back to Toledo, a lot of guys don't want to do that. Like I'm one of the best players ever to play here. I'm supposed to be in the NFL, but I'll go and take this position and go back to school. It seems like a lot of those decisions helped you eventually land. Obviously there's luck and good fortune as well, but you made a series of good decisions, it seems like.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say it was humbling. I mean, just, to be an all-time great at the school, and then I'm in the NFL. I'm pulling up in the parking lot in my 93 Dodge Spirit, and there's Bentleys and there's Mercedes and there's all these luxury vehicles. And then it's like, just like this, I'm back at Toledo and I'm sleeping on my old roommate's couch. Like I didn't even have a bedroom, so it really was, I guess it woke me up again. Like it kind of, it reinvigorated me. It gave me like, okay, I don't want to be living like this. So if and when I do get another opportunity, I'm going to kill it. Yeah. And that's not discrediting the work that I did in Cleveland, because I've always been a big time work ethic guy. I mean, my father's a degree black belt. Like we grew up in the dojo. Like that work ethic was early on taught to us. So it was never a lack of work. I think the way that it happened definitely opened my eyes to professional football and how nothing is guaranteed and how you basically have to go take it. So there's no guarantee that anybody's going to get an opportunity, but when you get it, you better go seize it.
So how did your opportunity come in New Orleans from you becoming a practice squad guy to all of a sudden being an integral part of that offense for many years? How did that happen?
Yeah, so 05 practice squad, like I said, I was hungry, and every single day, and I tell guys now, like if you're on a practice squad, every day is your game day. There is no days off for practice squad players, because once you have one bad day on practice squad, you can be gone tomorrow. If you're an active roster guy, you're a big money guy, you can have some bad days. But if you are the practice squad guy, you're on the bottom of the pecking order, and you are the easiest to replace. Like I saw it in my time on the practice squad in that year. We had so many different guys on and off the practice squad. I was like, this is crazy. But that's professional football. So I every single day, I made sure I was making plays. And we got to about week 11, I think, either 11 or 12. Hassan comes up to me, hey, man, you've been doing a great job. We're going to activate you. We need a kick return. I was like, that, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. So that week of practice comes, pull my hamstring. Literally, like a Thursday practice, which is, the long track meet, third down practice, pull my hamstring. So I'm hurt. I'm rehabbing for the next couple weeks. I get 3 weeks later, I'm pretty good to go, but I'm back practicing again. As comes to me, hey man, tight end went down. We got to sign another tight end. We're going to put you back on the practice squad. So that was basically the end of my opportunity that year. But that really gave me, I would say, more hope in that they finally see me and they know that I'm at least capable.
Right.
Well, I mean, that was a crazy year, just as far as the Hurricane Katrina, being displaced, them moving us around from place to place in San Antonio, no real help from the NFL. Our facilities were horrible. Like, I always tell people we were the bad news bears of the NFL. Like, it was one of those type of seasons. They should do a movie on that season, because it would be tragedy mixed with comedy, mixed with like drama. I mean, it was a crazy year. And really, like, for a rookie, I was like, this is what the NFL is like. This is absolutely crazy. Yeah. So Hazlitt gets fired, Payton gets hired. The first thing that I hear from my agent about Sean Payton was he wants you to go to NFL Europe. I'm like, NFL Europe? Like, I don't want to go to NFL Europe. He's like, well, you didn't play in any games last year. They want to get you there, get you some reps, get some current film on you. I'm like, all right, man, I'll go to NFL Europe. So the World Cup in 2006 was in Germany. In the kind of late spring, early summer. So they moved NFL Europe season up. So we started our camp in like early February. Well, in Germany, it's cold in February, March. So we had our camp in Tampa.
You're an Ohio boy, though. You're an Ohio boy, though.
I am an Ohio boy, but I lived in Texas for the last year pretty much. So I'm like, my blood thinned out a little bit.
Right.
So, we have camp. We fly over to Germany like late February, playing a couple games, and I'm leading the league in receiving. And like week 3 or 4, I think it was, dislocate my thumb, get hurt. They figure out that they don't have to do surgery, but you're not going to play the rest of the season. We're going to send you back to the States. And back then, the rehab, I guess, facility for NFL Europe was in Birmingham, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And so we had to fly back to Birmingham, Alabama. All the hurt guys, they just throw you on a plane.
Andrews was?
So this was James Andrews was in Birmingham, but he wasn't affiliated with this clinic back then.
Okay. Gotcha.
He did a lot of the surgeries because he was there in Birmingham. But so I'm in Birmingham with a cast on, showing up to rehab, and they're throwing ice on the top of my cast. So I'm like, what? Like, why am I here? So I called the trainer from New Orleans, and I asked him, can you please get me out of here? Like, I'm doing shoulder raises, and I'm running for 20 minutes on the treadmill, and then they're putting ice on top of my cast. Like, this isn't doing anything for me. So I got to go back to New Orleans. Finished my rehab there. They built me a splint, so I got to join the team for the late OTAs and mini camp, and that's where I really got to, learn the offense, be around the coaches, let them see that I could play. Mm-hmm. So they got their first glimpse of me. But when I really, really showed them was that 2006 training camp. We were in Jackson, Mississippi at Millsaps College, and obviously this is Sean Payton's first time as a head coach and his first training camp. So he was going to run us into the ground. He was going to try to do away with all the guys from the previous regime that just couldn't handle what he was throwing at us. Right. And a lot of guys either tapped out, asked to be traded. I mean, it was a brutal 100+ degrees every day, 2-a-days every day, which is such a foreign concept now. Full pads in every single practice. That's like crazy. At night, we'd be praying for like a huge rainstorm. So please let us get one practice rained out so we don't have to go out there. But and the worst part, I would say, even worse than that, was New Orleans wasn't ready for us to be back there. We played our home games one in Shreveport, Louisiana, and the other one I think we played in Jackson, Mississippi, because we played at Jackson Memorial Stadium. So we didn't even go back to New Orleans. So our whole 6 weeks of training camp was like real life training camp. Whereas nowadays your training camp is 2.5, 3 weeks. You break camp, you go home. Yeah. Nah, we didn't have that. We were in the dorms fighting this 105, 110 degree weather and banging heads every single day. But I stood out. I made plays every day. I was one of the MVPs of training camp that year. I was returning punts. Like I had a huge average in the preseason, and that was kind of what opened their eyes, that I could be a good player. And ended up making the team, played in a few of the games. And then we had somebody, Michael Lewis, came back from a shoulder injury, and Peyton comes up to me, "Hey man, we're gonna put you back on practice squad." I'm like, dang, what is it gonna take for me to stick and really get an opportunity? And I just, I played 4 games in 2006. Finished the year on the practice squad. That year we went to the NFC Championship game. So it was tough on me mentally not being involved, on that level. Obviously I was involved. I was helping get the guys prepared. I felt like I was a better receiver than a lot of the guys they'd be guarding, the DBs. So I had a part in it, but I wasn't playing in any games. And I really went through a pretty dark and negative time where I was just like, man, this might not even be for me. I love football. I love it here. I love the team. But if they're not going to give me an opportunity, then why am I wasting my time? Right. So, a couple of guys that I'm close with or teammates just, hang in there. You're going to get your opportunity. Your time is going to come. And then
give me an idea. Who were the receivers? Was this Colston was there? Was Devery Henderson there?
This was Marcus' rookie year. Marcus was a 7th round draft pick
from Hofstra.
So nobody from Hofstra. Nobody ever thought that he was going to come in and he was going to start from day one. But I tell you what, when he lined up out there, he looked like a pro. Yeah, and when the ball came his way, he looked like a grown man.
I saw him play in college. I actually went to a couple of his games because my boy Ricky Bryant. Do you know Ricky? Ricky Bryant?
I know Ricky Bryant.
Yeah. Okay, so Ricky played at Hofstra after he transferred from Ohio State. So I used to go to their games, and I was like, who is this dude? You know, like, so I knew he was going to be a pro. But who else was what other receivers?
Was Jimmy Graham there?
No, Jimmy was years after us. Joe Horn was our starting Z.
Joe Horn's a beast.
Devery was the backup Z. Marcus became the starting X, but Dante Stallworth was the starting X at that time. So that was kind of like our main group of guys. But you know, from day one, you could see like this dude is going to be pretty good. You know, and Drew loved him. The coaches loved him. He was quiet. He didn't say a word. He showed up and bullied the DBs and made plays every day. And so, like, for me, it was almost inspiring to see this dude, like, who came from small school. They gave him an opportunity. He seized it. And so for me, it's like, I'm going to do the same thing. Like, whenever I get a chance, you know, I'm going to do the same thing. So 07 comes. We start out terrible. We're 0-4. And Coach Payton comes up to myself and Devery Henderson, and he's like, you guys are going to alternate starts now. And so that's when I was like, oh.
And you were still on the practice squad?
No, I was active. I made the team. I had another great training camp, made the team, and we're playing at I think we're playing at Carolina week 5. And he's like, Lance is going to start this week. Devery, you're going to be the number 2, and we'll alternate each week. And so from that point on, that was kind of when I became a regular player and started starting games. And that it kind of, you know, springboarded me to 08, where I had, you know, almost 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. 09 is the Super Bowl year that I missed a lot of time with injury, but, you know, still was able to get healthy enough to play in this playoffs and make plays in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So I always had the idea that I was good enough. I always had the mentality that once my opportunity comes, I was going to seize it. It was just a matter of me getting it.
And so you mentioned earlier that, you know, like you had a chip on your shoulder probably, and you know, you questioned different times whether this was for you. And did you ever have that moment where you're like, I made it. I fucking finally made it. Like, did you ever have that, or did you keep that chip on your shoulder through the whole period of time?
I think I kept it on my shoulder because I had seen too many guys come and go.
Right.
And I knew that being a guy that came in undrafted and being a guy that bounced up and down from the practice squad, it wouldn't be much for them to get rid of me. You know, like you know, I'm not a first round pick. Like they hold on to first round picks a lot longer. They give them more opportunities because of what's invested in them.
Yeah.
So I knew that any type of comfort would lead to complacency. Any type of complacency would not allow me to put my best foot forward each and every day.
Right.
So my mentality was always, I haven't made it. And I think that's the reason why I stayed and ended up playing in the NFL for 11 years, is because I just never allowed myself to have that moment where it's like, I made it. I always felt like once I'm done, I can reflect. Like, man, I made it to the NFL. I had a hell of a career. I don't do a whole lot of that nowadays, but every now and again I come in my office and I look at my Super Bowl ring and I'm like, I did that. You know, that was pretty cool. But during, I could never, not for a moment was I ever going to allow myself to not work harder, because it's hard to get there, but it's much harder to stay there once you're there, because from the day you are there, they're trying to replace you. They're trying to get younger and cheaper. And I knew that, and I realized that from my time up and down from the practice squad. And I wasn't going to let that happen to me again.
And since you were there, you were in New Orleans during a very critical time, right? Katrina happened, and there were a lot of things going on in the city itself. And the attachment, you know, what we all saw through that time period was the relationship between the Saints and the city, right? I wanted you to talk a little bit about that and how special that was, the culture of New Orleans, and also bringing a Super Bowl after all of that heartache and pain, what that did for you guys as a team and what that did for the city as a whole.
Well, I mean, like I said before, I was in San Antonio from the moment that I signed with the Saints. So I didn't even fully understand the gravity of Hurricane Katrina. You know, being an outsider and seeing it on TV is different than living it. And your homes are ruined, and people that you know homes are ruined, and basically their lives are turned upside down. So I didn't fully grasp it. I understood because of what the stories that the guys told, and I understood based on the circumstances or the cards that we were dealt in San Antonio, but I didn't really fully understand it until 06, when we went back to New Orleans and we reopened the Dome. That game, that Monday Night Football game against the Atlanta Falcons and Mike Vick is, I would say, probably one of the most important football games to ever be played. And it hits right on what you were talking about, that the city, the state, the entire region that had been decimated by a hurricane, a natural tragedy that was one of the worst to ever happen in our history, of people that were down, not necessarily out, but they were close.
Right. Yeah.
That needed something to give them hope, needed something to kind of galvanize, needed something to look forward to, and the atmosphere in that game that night was one that I think is right up there with the Super Bowl. I mean, it was electric. From the moment that you walked in, you felt it. There was tension because everybody's nervous. Oh man, this is the first game back. We've got to win this game. Like, it means more than just a W in the win column. Like we need it. And I think as players and as a team, we understood that and we felt that and we understood that this is bigger than just a football game. Like we've got to win this game because we need to give these people something to cheer about. We need to give these people something that is going to brighten their lives, something that they've lacked for the last calendar year, plus at that time that and thankfully, we were able to go out and take care of business. And the relationship, I think, from there even just got stronger with that community. And I tell people all the time, the feeling with Saints fans as a player is a feeling of family. And I know a lot of people say that, or a lot of different teams say that. But I can genuinely say in New Orleans, that's how it feels. No matter where you go, everybody loves you. They treat you like family. They treat you like they're one of their own. And it is like they really truly feel Saints football. Like when we win on Sundays, on Mondays, the whole community, positive attitude, rejoiceful, just good, and the vibes are great. When we lose, you can tell that the community feels that physically. It's crazy. Like everywhere you go, like everybody's down and in the dumps and just like it's crazy, but that is like it is a family down there in New Orleans.
I think it's also just part of the culture, right? I remember God rest his soul, but our boy Will Smith, he invited us to a bunch of games and we used to go down there in his suite and all that type of stuff. And I remember we came down there from, I think it was a Monday Night Football game. And by 8 a.m., I mean, the tailgate, I was like, wait, I thought Ohio State was crazy. But 8 a.m. for the whole day, and Monday Night Football, it doesn't start till 8 at night. And then also just seeing the people and the food and the energy and the songs, and the stadium was rocking that night. It was just like, I love that atmosphere.
It's one of my favorite cities.
Yeah. So let's talk about that family aspect too, and the team aspect. Let's talk about Brees, right? So I want to talk to you about him from a couple standpoints. But first, let's talk about football, because there are a lot of people that think Drew Brees is going to go down as one of the top 5 quarterbacks maybe of all time. Talk to us a little bit about your perspective about Drew Brees as a player. Where do you think he kind of measures in history, and some of the things that you learned from him that helped you become the great player that you became?
Well, I mean, I think top 5 for sure, if not top 3. I mean, it's hard to really quantify, quarterbacks from different eras. But if we're talking quantifying, I mean, he's got the most passing yards, he's got the most touchdowns. Sure, he's had a long career, but I mean, how does that not at least get him in the door of the conversation? Right. I mean, that for me is like, well, you can't compare Roger Staubach to Drew Brees. And I said, no, you can't, because Drew Brees is so much better. Like, I don't care what the argument is about how great he was back then. Like, if you imagine putting Drew Brees back then, like it's a weird conversation. But I think just as far as work ethic, as far as chip on his shoulder, he was a 2nd-round draft pick, not a first. He thought he was going to be a first. He was an All-American guy. So, like, just watching him work kind of helped me want to work more, because I'm like, if this is our leader, our captain, the best player on our team, and he's doing all this extra stuff, then I got to be doing it too. And we did, obviously we worked together a lot, but like the stories that you hear about our really good teams in New Orleans,
they usually start with talking about Drew Brees and how he works and how after every practice he's out there with his receivers, his running backs, his tight ends after practice, getting more reps because he wasn't satisfied with play 7 of period 8. Let's run that. Right. Let's run that a couple times so we get that right. And that is the reason why a guy that's not super athletic, that's not super big, never had the strongest arm, has been able to put himself in the conversation as one of the greatest of all time because he is always working, always. Yeah. Even to this day, going into year 20, I'm sure he's out on the field over here at Santa Fe Christian, about 20 minutes from me in San Diego, drawing drops, going through the progression of all of his plays, even without receivers. I mean, he does a personal walkthrough. After the walkthrough, the team walkthrough on Saturdays before the game, he goes into the indoor facility by himself, a lot of times with the lights off. So the only light in the facility is the light that reflects from the weight room into the bubble. And he goes through every single play of the script from the top of his head. And he does the drop to every play. He does the footwork and the ball handling with no ball. And every single time he's throwing to his target, and then he points to his other guys in order of his progression. Every single game, he does that. And this is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah. And this is something that he does that's part of his routine that allows a guy that, isn't the most physically gifted to play 20 years in the NFL and still be successful and still be a Pro Bowl guy and still have his team in the conversation as one of the best in the NFL and still be a Super Bowl favorite going into year 20. So that's the type of worker that he is. And the relationship that I've had with him has been one that started with me coming back from NFL Europe, hurt hand, small, probably never even heard of me before. I'm in the locker room. He's in the locker room. We're the only two in there. It's like 6:30 in the morning because, rehab, you got to wake up early. Right. So he comes in. He's still working on his shoulder because he had the pretty bad shoulder injury in San Diego before he signed with New Orleans. He walks over to me, introduces himself to me, asks me if I need anything or if I do need anything to let him know. And right there, I knew this was a good dude. This is a guy that I'm going to be under his wing, or I'm going to be doing anything that he asks, or I'm going to work harder because that's the type of guy that he is. So that was my first personal experience with him. And I think it went a long way with the relationship that we developed as time went on, both on and off the field. And man, like I said, I think he's definitely one of the all-time greats, definitely a top 5 guy. Yeah. And, the other guys that people like to put in there ahead of him, I always want to hear the reasons why. Because I feel like I have reasons to refute anything that they can say. But obviously I'm a little bit biased too because my career it didn't turn out without Drew Brees. And that's what made, not to transition, but he's been in the news for a little bit more controversial reasons. I wanted to ask, considering that, right, from your first experience and every experience of any player that I know that's ever interacted with Drew, first and foremost says he's a good guy. Right. And to be connected to as many minority players as he has been and to have good relationships, what surprised me most about his commentary is I don't feel like he should have been as tone deaf considering his actual experiences in the league, right? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on his commentary and why you think he kind of was as disconnected as he was after 20 years in the league to have to come out and do all of that apologizing now, Yeah,
well, I think first and foremost, sometimes it takes a situation like his comments and the backlash that ensued for somebody to actually open their eyes and their ears and to learn. So I'm not going to say I'm glad that it happened. Obviously, you don't want stuff like that to happen. You don't want people that you know and you love to make comments that hurt so many people. But I think had it not happened, then he probably doesn't learn and he doesn't understand the significance of his words. And for me, it wasn't even – he made the same stance in 2017, which was disappointing. And I kind of excused it, right? He took the picture with President Trump and Melania at the national championship game, which I kind of made excuses for him. But then when he did this, for me personally, I felt almost stabbed in the back it was disappointing, which is what I tweeted after it happened. I wasn't going to write a huge statement. I wasn't going to go write an article, but I wanted to make sure that people understood somebody that was close to him, and he was going to see it. I knew he was going to see it, but I needed to make sure that I was heard in that moment, because I have such a close, intimate, relationship with the guy that it broke my heart to hear him say it and to not learn anything, at least in the last 3 years.
Right.
Forget about his experience with 80 to 90% of his teammates being black his entire career. Let's just talk about the last 3 years and all the things that have happened for him to not, I guess, think outside of his own personal box was disappointing to me. And to get back to my original point, the thing that was most disappointing is the gravity of his words, right? I'm not necessarily as disappointed that Drew Brees still felt that way. I'm more disappointed that he didn't realize that the things that he said would impact so many people, both negatively in the black community and the minority community and those who support us, and positively for the people who felt that exact same way, who would say, you know what? Drew Brees said it.
Right.
That must be, we're right. We're right about this. Or the people who were maybe finally coming over the fence to the right side after watching the actual knee on George Floyd's neck kill him. The people who were on the fence that were maybe coming to the side who could listen now to Drew Brees, I guess, refresh their memory of their original point to go back and say, you know what, forget that. I'm not worried about that. This is what it's all about. That to me was the most critical part. It's disappointing that he felt that way. But, he makes a good point. I stand because this is what it means to me, right? Well, you've got to take a second to think of what it might mean to other people, what it might mean to the 90% of your teammates that you've had throughout your career.
Yeah. Right. And these conversations, he hears these conversations in the locker room, right? It's not like.
And did you reach out to him? Did you ever actually talk to him personally about this?
Yes. So it's kind of crazy because I spoke to him the day before that interview, or at least that interview aired. And it was that first Blackout Tuesday where everybody was posting the Blackout Tuesday to try to raise awareness for Black Lives Matter and all these different things. He posted for Blackout Tuesday. Then he posted another one just basically about, us coming together and, kids in the park of all different races and backgrounds play together and they don't think anything about it. And I reached out to him that day and I said, thank you. It means a lot coming from somebody like you who has such a big platform, who has so many people who are looking to you to say something.
Right.
I wasn't going to reach out to him ahead of time and say, hey, you should do X, Y, and Z. I don't feel like that's my responsibility, and I would never want somebody to do it because somebody else told them they should do it.
Right.
So it for me personally, it felt like a slap in the face when the very next day he kind of reverts back to his 2017 stance.
Right.
And we did talk after. He texted me on Thursday, and we had a pretty good conversation where he was just, so apologetic. And I think that was the same day that the Saints had a team meeting, and they basically let all the players let him have it, and open up his eyes. And I feel like he was very remorseful. I feel like he finally got it. And I think the biggest part was he couldn't separate his own personal view and opinion of what the flag and the anthem meant with what a worldwide or an otherly view would be. And that I think, hearing from people who care about him and people being upset with him, I think that's finally what opened his eyes to it. And I told him, like, I understand you're going through it, and rightfully so. What you said was devastating to a lot of people. What you said could damage a lot more of, or I guess put a pause on some of the progress that we're starting to make in this movement. I still love the guy. I will still support the guy. And I told him, I will help you. If you need my help in any of these endeavors, as far as getting your name back, whether it's spending money, giving money, whether it's giving your time, whether it's even just educating you on the simple things, something as simple as the black soldiers who fought in World War II that came back to a different America than his grandfathers. I mean, my grandfathers fought in World War II. One was white, one was black. And they both came back and they had two different experiences.
Yeah.
So, I think
that brings me to a great point that I wanted to transition to, which is still along the same lines. But you just mentioned kind of your biracial, right? And your ethnicity and you're fighting for Black Lives Matter, but your understanding of it, and it's something that you've internalized. And I guess I have kind of two kind of perspectives on this. One or two kind of questions. One is, it seems like you've embraced kind of the role of speaking up, right? You're not one of the guys that's going to stay silent about things that happen in this time period and probably in other time periods, number one. And then number two, talk to us a little bit about how your experiences, personal experiences growing up, being biracial, right? Number one. And then number two, your personal experiences with racism and, police and stuff like that. The reason why I think that's important is because something that we want to do more is I want people to know that it doesn't matter whether you're played in the NFL or you live in the hood or anything in between, you are going to have these experiences. And I want people to actually hear them out of our mouths and understand why people like us are taking this personally and why people like us are fighting for some of these issues. So I know that was a lot, but just, jump in wherever you feel.
I mean, I think that you cannot, we're at a time now where your obviously your silence is complicity. Your silence is maybe more convenient. It'd be a lot easier for me to keep my mouth shut and not say anything and everybody loves me and, that's not important to me. What's important to me is that we are in a very precious and important moment in our history. One where the progress is different because there are people who don't look like us that are involved in this movement, which is I think is pertinent to actually changing things. We've protested forever, right? When there's been racist issues, lynchings, beatings, police brutality, there's always been protests. There's always been rioting or looting, which is I think the people who are on the other side of progress always like to point to the rioting and looting, which in my mind, you're losing focus, right? Don't pay attention to a couple of idiots when the masses are the ones that are trying to create and make change. So I think I would be doing everybody a disservice if I didn't open my mouth. And I understand I'm in a different position now than if I was an active player. But now it's more acceptable for active players to be speaking up and trying to make change that is good for everybody. I mean, that's the thing. Black Lives Matter symbolizes progress for equality. Black Lives Matter isn't trying to make Black lives better than everybody else. We're not asking for anything extra.
Right.
That's the thing. So like when there's somebody who comes out and they make a statement about Black Lives Matter that is negative to the cause or opposite to the cause, I'm always like, what is that all about? All we're saying is that Black Lives Matter or the All Lives Matter crew. All lives physically cannot matter until Black lives do. I mean, what is so hard to grasp about that concept?
I think you touched on a great point right there, right? Which is you're fighting for equality, right? And you're fighting for equality from a group of people that are used to superiority, right? So it's very hard for them to digest the reality of everyone catching up to them is kind of how I look at that group of people, right? They're feeling like their position of power is threatened due to their own insecurities. And as a result of that, they continue to marginalize other groups.
And that's what people say. They're like, a lot of people do understand it. They just don't. They don't agree. And that's the
right. Well, and I think the original plan was to minimize and marginalize. And now that there is, I would say, a boom in information, we've got way more access to being able to see what goes on all around this country, right? So 20 years ago, somebody, gets killed by the police and there's no body cameras and there's no cell phone cameras. We don't hear about it or we don't see it. We might hear about it and we might be upset and we might protest, but there is not that video evidence that's available now. And I think, there is no better time to force
because that's what, it's going to be forced change. There's this country was set up this way, right? So that we would be less than. That's changing. We're going to force it to change, and people are either going to get on board with that, or they're going to be on the wrong side of history. And I think that's important. And regardless, biracial or not, I'm still looked at as a black man. I consider myself a black man. I was brought up a black man. So I'm going to fight, and I'm going to bring along my white brothers and sisters, my other minorities along with me, because that's my responsibility. I feel like it's important, and it's incumbent upon me as a black man to do everything that I can to help further push the progress. Whether that's having a conversation with people who don't understand, whether that's getting people affiliated or involved with black industry or black community or Black Lives Matter, or whether it's helping support black business. I mean, it is the time is now, because if we don't capitalize on this moment, when are we going to do it? I mean, that to me is like, it's either now or never, because after this, we can't allow stuff to just go back to normal. Like like, there's got to be police reform. There's got to be accountability held for the officers that are continuing to kill us and not see any repercussions from it. There's got to be opportunity in the executive level of all business in the business world. There's got to be opportunity for black and brown people that have never had opportunity before. We've got to be looked at as equal, right? That's a big part of it. People just look at us and they're just like.
Just on that real quick, and I'm gonna let V jump in. Is that there's a study that's out there, pretty popular study, where they basically sent two resumes, identical resumes, to corporations, and one of them had a black sounding name, so to speak. The other one had a white sounding name, so to speak. And I think there was like a 50% more or higher ratio in callbacks for the white sounding names and the black sounding names with the exact same resume. And so that speaks to what you just said speaks to that. But V, I wanted you to jump in.
I think you provide a great example of what integrated America actually should look like, right? But I think I wanted to ask you about your personal experiences. You've obviously have family that has probably, you've had to break down views through your family. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of educating even your own family and the importance of that, of actually understanding that a lot of people hold these views because they've been passed down generationally and they don't have someone to speak to actually see. A lot of your family probably actually was able to see through your eyes, like our experience isn't the same as Lance's experience.
Well, yeah, for sure. And I think just even before I answer that question, the thing that always killed me growing up was when, obviously you get a little older, middle school, high school, when people say, I don't agree with interracial dating.
Yeah.
Like that for me, like it cut me, because I'm like, dang, that's the reason for my existence. Like I don't exist if a black man and a white woman and vice versa can't be together. So like that was always like, you talk about microaggressions and racism. Like that for me was like, you don't know how racist that is. Like that is a terrible thing. And I experienced that a couple of times with girls that I dated growing up, where it's just like, I don't know how my family's going to feel about this. Or one example, you can't ever come to my house when my dad is home. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And, as a young kid, it's just like, okay, I'm excited to be with this girl, whatever. Like, I don't have to go to her house and be around her dad. I don't want to be around him if he doesn't want to be around me. But looking back, it's like, damn, like that's a pretty crazy thing. I love you. I cheer for you at all the games, all the football and basketball games, but I don't want you with my daughter.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty crazy to me. Like, and I feel like that's something that continues to happen today, where there's a lot of white men who feel like a black man is not good enough for their daughters.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. Like that's crazy. Like, I'm married to a white woman, and she shares a lot of the views that I have. And she's all on board with the Black Lives Matter and everything. And we have conversations. And we have had conversations with people who are close to us that maybe don't not necessarily feel the same way, but don't quite understand what's going on. And we've had to open people's eyes about things and how they see things. And that, I mean, I feel like I couldn't be more proud of her and how she is and how she understands what's going on and how important she feels that this movement is. And, I've had to tell her about, the racism I've experienced sometimes for her to finally realize that, okay, that this is a big deal. I moved to Westerville. I lived in
I think it's important to talk about. That's what I was asking you a little bit earlier. Touch a little bit on some of the things that you've experienced. You don't have to go all the way into detail, but I think it's important for people to hear it. That it's not just something that we're just talking about in the, in the air somewhere. That these are real, actual stories. Yeah,
I mean, I remember Little League, Columbus, Ohio, playing for the Eastland Vikings. We go play a road game in an area that was predominantly white, and they called us all kinds of monkeys and niggers and coons and all that. Like that happened. I didn't grow up around in a white neighborhood. I grew up around black kids. Like my whole neighborhood was either black kids or Russians and Jewish kids who kind of just, there wasn't a lot of white kids. Now I went to Columbus Public Schools, which was pretty mixed. I would say probably more black than white, but pretty mixed. So I didn't have a whole lot of racism at school, but I did through sports. And the things that people would say, even going to high school, we played at Ashland in high school basketball my junior year. And I just remember before we went there, the coaches kind of preparing us for it. And my team that year, we went Westerville. I went to Westerville South. Like back then was a predominantly white school. Now we have black kids on a lot of the sporting teams, which is normal. But they said, look, this place isn't diverse like ours is, and you might hear some things that you don't like, and you can't react, you can't let it get to you. I just remember just going out for the opening layups of the warm up and them calling us coons. They just kept saying coons. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like nuts. And they didn't care. Like this, we were in their gym, we were in their hometown, and they didn't do anything about it. So that happened. That was another. I think at Newark Catholic or one of those schools, same exact experience.
Yeah, they had signs and everything. We actually went into the stands and took the signs out of the fans' hands.
Yeah, it's crazy. But to even put that type of pressure on kids, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, and then for your coaches just to be like, yo, you got to get over it. You kind of, I mean, I don't know what else they're supposed to do necessarily, but it's just like, wow, that's a lot to put on somebody at that age, to realize that people hate you for essentially no reason.
I think I would have rather them do what they did than not say anything. Because then if they don't say anything, they don't know what kind of reaction is going to come from myself or the 2 or 3 other black dudes that were on the team back then. I think the reaction might have been different. I'm not saying I would have ran up in the stands and tried to fight somebody. But it might have been a situation where my game suffers because I'm thinking about something that has nothing to do with the basketball game. And that just them taking the time to say, look, they're ignorant. They might say some ignorant things. I want to prepare you just in case it happens.
And those are those are tough lessons for us to learn at that age, but I do think they are lessons. And I guess as we continue to move forward, I guess another question I have for you is, what are your goals now? Within the movement, so to speak, but also like in other things. I know you have other endeavors, other things that you care about. I know you're a family man now, so just talk to us a little bit about how you see life moving forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, within the movement, I'm going to keep speaking up. I'm going to keep doing the things that I'm doing. Obviously, the protests have kind of died down, which I went to a few here in San Diego, and they were awesome. And they were like really eye-opening to see the amount of people and the diversity of the people and how important this is to people who look like us, but people who also don't look like us. And that I think that's important. I'm in talks now with a company here that I'm involved with about doing a huge fundraiser directly for Black Lives Matter. To help raise more money to be able to do more things. And it's just, I think it's about continuing the conversation. So I'm going to continue to speak up, and I'm going to continue to speak out against the people who are contrary to what Black Lives Matter stands for, because I like, you're either a part of a positive movement and a change in history, or you're going to be on the back end of it, and we're going to leave you back there. Like, you know, I get tired of hearing people say this is how they were brought up. Like, it's 2020 now. If you're not opening your eyes or opening a book or allowing yourself to listen, and you're just going to revert back to how you were taught, then I don't want to have anything to do with you. Now, older people, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, who have always been that way, like, that's different. But people who are younger and have the ability to learn still, that you know, should want to learn, if they're feeling that way, then I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince them. I'm going to use my time in a more effective manner in trying to further the movement for equality and justice, and, you know, to make this world a better place for my children, because the world is looking, our country at least, is looking a lot more like me and my children than the people who founded this country. And it's just going to continue. Our country's getting more black and brown. Like, the government can't stop that. So I'm going to try to do what I can to make this place better for my children and the generations after us. So, you know, that's important to me. Like you said, I'm a family man. I've got 3 kids, 2 young daughters. Graylee's almost 5. Nola will be 3 in October, and then my son Marino will be 1 in August. Wow. So we are all hands on deck, busy with the 3, trying to wrangle them.
How'd you end up in San Diego?
I ended up in San Diego because my wife is from Northern California. She graduated, was a cheerleader at Sac State, and then moved down to San Diego because a lot of people from her area moved down here to kind of, you know, get away to a better place, I guess you could say. And so when we were dating, we started dating in 2013. I was still playing, obviously. We got pregnant with Graylee in my last year. I was in Detroit. We were living in Tampa, Florida in the off seasons. And once we had the baby, I was like, I know she wants to be in California. Her whole family's in California, and, you know, this is home for her. And being in Florida wasn't home for her. Being in Florida really wasn't home for me. But I'm an Ohio kid, and a lot of us have dreams of moving to Florida. I mean, that was just the reality of it. So we get to California, and I love it here, man. I've found you know, a good group of people to kind of be friends with. I've affiliated myself with a couple of different businesses here, and you know, I've been out in the community. Still do a lot of community work, whether it's Christmas events or Christmas give backs. I usually do at hospitals, or this past Christmas I did it at a school for kids who have issues, just any kind of issues, elementary school. And we do a Thanksgiving turkey giveaway every Thanksgiving, where we basically adopt a family, and we bring them everything Thanksgiving. And we even throw in a couple of Christmas gifts, because we understand that they're not in a position to buy a lot of Christmas gifts for their kids. Right. And I've always understood, I had a receiver coach in New Orleans a long time, Curtis Johnson, that said, this life isn't about you. It's about what you can do and how you can impact those around you. That's what's going to live on long after you're gone. Yeah, and I've embraced that, and you know, just, you know, try to do what I can every day to be the best version of me. I mean, that's what it's all about. But while realizing this life isn't all about me, you know, it's about bettering the life of my family. It's about, you know, giving time and money and effort and energy to those around me who need it, and still trying to have something that wakes me up every day, gives me energy, because there was a lull after I retired. That was just kind of like, okay, like, now what? Like, I hit that retirement wall, I guess you could say, where you I'm not saying I felt worthless, but I definitely felt like I need something. Like, I need something. You know,
that happens to a lot of players.
Yeah.
Players. Yeah, go ahead, B.
Yeah, and you know, I was just going to say, you know, what you were saying about San Diego, I feel like it's one of the shining examples of what America can be, because every time I've been there, I actually feel like it's integrated. It's not just that there are pockets of minorities here and there, but everyone, you go into a restaurant, you see black and brown faces, you see white faces, and it's more of a natural and organic interaction. I think if more cities were like that, or looked at that as an example, this country definitely could develop.
That's one of the things that I love most about San Diego. When my wife and I were dating, every single time that I come here, obviously we're young, we don't have any kids, so we're going to go out to dinner, we're going to go out to the club, and we're going to do social things. It was so contrary to what I grew up with in Columbus, and in Toledo, and sometimes in other places where usually you go places and it's very one or the other, or one and the others.
Right.
San Diego is not like that. New Orleans was a lot like that, where it's very mixed and very diverse, and everybody's kind of cool with everybody. That's not to say that racism doesn't exist here, because I know it does.
It does.
But I guess the big majority, the vast majority of San Diego is very, very open and to the diversity, and it's beautiful. And like you said, it is a picture of what America can and should be. Absolutely.
Let me ask you this question, and then we're going to get to something fun and get you out of here. First of all, thanks for joining us, man. This has been really good.
Yeah, it has been.
So one question I have for you is actually back to football season. And right now it's July, and the season, typically camps start at the end of this month. And there's a whole coronavirus out here right now. And, there are all kinds of leagues trying to figure out what to do. The data is different depending on who you talk to. The states are dealing with different issues, with their leadership. How do you see an actual season playing out? I guess as an observer, right? And you're just as a regular citizen who's evaluating this. How do you see a season playing out? And then the second question is from someone who actually played in the league and understand how injuries work, and injured reserves and rosters, and the fact that guys are going to have to quarantine, all that type of stuff. How do you see a season happening this year in the NFL?
I don't. I can kind of answer both of them at once. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. You're talking 80. I guess they're talking about 80-man rosters now, and you've got 32 teams. You're already starting with 2,400 guys, and then you've got staff, you've got coaches, you've got trainers, you've got media, you've got like all these different elements. It's impossible to do a bubble. Can't do a bubble.
No.
There's no way for an NFL. Too many people. You're quarantined, right? Are you going to quarantine guys away from their families? Are you going to mandate that their families don't go anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we live in New Orleans. We play in New Orleans. We travel to and from. We come back home. Are we to be expected that our families can't go shopping? They can't go out to eat. They can't intermingle with other families. What exactly are going to be the mandates?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens if a Russell Wilson or a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady what if they get COVID?
Yep.
What do you do then? Right? Mm-hmm. Like the margin for error in the NFL is so small. Something like that happens can impact your entire season. What if he gets it and before he tests positive, are they going to be testing guys every single day? That's another thing. I honestly don't know how they do it. I know that the NFL, as I guess finance forward as they are, they're going to do everything they can to play. And I think I tweeted it the other day, and that includes sacrificing the players.
Yes.
The owners aren't going to be the ones putting themselves in harm's way. They're not showing up to practice every day. I would imagine they're not flying to all the games now. The owners are the ones that reap the benefits of the NFL. Well, regardless of what anybody says, I know Patrick Mahomes just signed a $450 million deal, but the person that's going to see the most of that is the Hunt family. They have solidified basically their franchise for the next 10 years, 12 years, I think. So it's about the bottom line. It's not about protecting players. It's not about player safety. It's about doing whatever they can, because nothing has stopped them before. COVID didn't stop the NFL draft. COVID didn't stop free agency. So why would they think that COVID is going to stop football? I think it's going to take – they might go to training camp. They might. They're supposed to go at the end of this month. They might play a preseason game or two. They might even play a couple games in a regular season. I just don't see how they get through an entire season without either so many guys getting infected, them having to shut it down, or the government shutting it down because it becomes a COVID cesspool.
Let me ask this real quick, V. Actually, go ahead, V, because I'm going to ask about college. Go ahead, V.
Okay. I was gonna say, what impact do you think that's going to have as a former player for the players, right, and the people who are in the NFL to lose a season, right? Because the NFL, as they always say, is not for long already. To lose a full year in your prime, or someone like Brady who's at the end of his career, what do you think the challenges are going to be for the players if there is no season?
Well, you're already seeing the impact of it even before anything football-wise has happened, right? They had the CBA negotiations this offseason, and it was a little bit contentious, and the players ended up giving in as a result of a vote that went forward after it was put down by the executive committee. So somehow, some way, the Players Association put the vote for the new CBA to the entire body of the players. Well, with the new COVID rules, the rosters are going from 90 guys to 80 guys. So the bottom 10 guys on every roster times 32, that's 320 guys. I would imagine those guys are the guys that went pro new CBA, because in that CBA, the owners snuck in a small salary increase for minimum players. The minimum players are going to be the bottom 10 guys, right? So the owners win again based off of the little nuances that they put in there that a lot of times the guys don't really read thoroughly. Oh, I'm making extra money? Yep, I'm all for it. Don't worry about what's going to happen to former players' benefits or all these different things. That's another conversation. Yeah. But I do think that a player in his prime losing a year could go one of two ways. It could be great, right? A guy could miss a whole year and get his body back 100% physical, or guys that have had surgeries, they can just feel good again. They can train and they can take less reps off of their arms or less reps off of their legs, and they can feel good. But a guy that's trying to make it, that's going to be bad. It could be because there's going to be another crop of young guys the next year, and it's going to be harder for those guys to get an opportunity. Not that they can't play, but to get another opportunity, it's going to be tough. And I mean, obviously for the guys on the last leg, it is dramatic. I mean, like, they might not get another opportunity. Obviously, Brady and Brees will get an opportunity, but an older guy that's an older minimum salary guy might not, because a younger, cheaper guy would just come in and take his spot. But I think safety should be paramount, right? You shouldn't be worried about playing football when there's people dying still. Like,
so let me ask
there's a lot of people still dying.
Because there's even so, and I think that's even probably more true, and I think you would probably agree, in college, right? Because college guys are even a leather layer lower, so to speak, where they're not getting paid. They don't have necessarily any recourse, and so it's a different risk for them that they should be assuming. If you're going to make $20 million in a season and you want to take that risk, even though you can still spread it to other people, that's a different risk than someone going in who's not paid, who's just playing for a scholarship. What are your perspectives on that in terms of college football, and whether or not we see a season there, and what do you think should happen there?
Well, I think it's unfortunate because there's nobody to protect college football players, right? Mm-hmm. College football players don't have agents. They don't have a union. And we've already seen coaches like Mike Gundy and others basically saying, we got to get back. We got to stimulate our economy, basically saying they don't give a damn about the players. They care about what the players can do for them and those around them. Like, that's which is crazy to me. Like that, I wish there was a college football players union. But you know what? The NCAA is just like the NFL. They're about this. Like, that's what's important to them. It's out with the old, in with the new, and they're going to keep the machine going. It's just now that people are speaking out, and it's becoming important that college players are finally able to monetize their name, which is insane to me. Like, at Toledo, they used to sell my jersey. I never saw any money from that. But that was my jersey. I made that jersey.
Make sure they sold that number, right?
Right.
100%. It didn't have my name on the back, but it didn't take a brain surgeon to look up who number one was at Toledo. Like, it's very easy. So I think it's going to be harder for college football because the conferences aren't necessarily all in sync. The NFL is one entity, right? Mm-hmm. If the NFL is playing, there's not one team that's going to not play. Whereas, like, the SEC could potentially say, well, we're going to play our conference schedule. And the Big Ten could say, well, we're not playing, which I think would be even worse. I think they should all be on the same accord. If one isn't playing, they all shouldn't play. And I think they should err on the side of safety more than anything. Like, if you got to give these guys an extra year of a scholarship, then so be it.
Well,
If it's a guy that
Go ahead.
if it's a guy that is
I
gonna
think we're
be
gonna
a
say the
pro,
same thing. Go ahead.
let him go pro anyway, right?
Right,
Like, they're worried about paying an extra year of scholarship when the money that they're making specifically in football, they have the money to do it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and that also is one of those things when you talk about they care about themselves first. I think part of the reason that some of these big programs are fighting to make sure our college football season in some way happens is what you just touched on. What happens next year when Justin Fields becomes draft eligible, right? Is he going to come back to Ohio State or is he going to go pro? You know, a lot of these schools, same thing at Clemson. A lot of these guys are in their final years, and I think these programs, they're so scared of losing the money that these big time players like Trevor Lawrence, what value does Trevor Lawrence create for the Clemson program that they lose when he leaves, right? Yeah, you might be able to replace him, but that's my fear in how they're evaluating these things is, although they're saying, like you said, it should be safety first, but everyone's thinking about all these other things that they may never bring up to us, the public, but they're talking about in the back rooms.
Well, and that's also what exposes the business of college football. Let's stop playing around. Let's stop acting like this is just amateurism and guys are just, going for scholarships and let's go cheer on the team. It's like, no, this is big business. And it's not just big business for the program, but it's also big business for these institutions because a lot of money that they make from these big programs, they use for many other things in their institutions, including funding other sporting programs, which a lot of them you're starting to see close down. And I think this is starting to expose this farce that these are collegiate scholar athletes. This is big business. This is pros. I don't care what you want to. It may not be the NFL, but these are pros.
Yeah,
and they're generating billions of dollars. So let's stop the whole farce. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out this season because people are going to have to come to grips with a lot of reality, and they're going to have to make admissions that they haven't been forced to make. For example, if you send those guys out there, that means that you're essentially admitting that this is all about money because you know that it's not safe. You know that it's not safe. You know that they can get it easily. You know you can't socially distance or wear a mask or do any of the recommendations that are coming from the people that we all.
You literally are breathing on each other every play, right?
There's no way. So if you do that, that means that you're just saying, listen, the money of this and the entertainment value of this is more important to us than the player safety. So anyway. We could probably talk about that forever, but I want to get you out of here. So we're going to ask you two fun questions. I didn't prepare you for these ones, and then we'll let you go. So my first question is, give us your top 5 musicians of all time. Top 5 musicians that influence you in your life.
Top 5 musicians. Wow.
Yeah.
I always, at least growing up, like I always said, like 90s R&B was like my favorite genre of music, kind of mid to
very blessed to have
early 2000s. Man, I mean, Drake is my favorite artist, period, of all time. My guy, like my best friends and I are all like big Drake heads or whatever.
Okay.
God support your light skinned brother.
100%, like my mulatto brother. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Drake for sure. Shoot, man. I mean, we grew up listening to Michael Jackson. His music, I feel like, timeless. Obviously, he had some other issues that are scary and as a father are very frightening. But his music was classic.
But it was, right.
That's two. I mean, I've been a big Jay-Z fan forever. Somebody who's aged in the rap game well.
Right.
And still, when he wants to, can jump on anybody's track and kill it.
Right.
I just remember like my senior year, Jagged Edge. Like Jagged Edge was like it. So I would say like definitely influenced me like with the dancing and everything as I got to the NFL. Like that was like around the time that I started kind of coming into my own with the self-confidence and dancing at parties and stuff like that. So like there's that's part of the reason why I ended up dancing in the NFL.
Right.
Who else, man? I'm a huge fan of John Legend.
Okay.
Like I
Ohio
enjoy.
Ohio boy.
Yeah, for sure. I enjoy listening to John Legend and love his wife. She shoots it to you straight.
Right.
But yeah. I mean,
That's fine.
I obviously didn't have time. If I had time to prepare, I might have had a different list. But Drake definitely would have been number one on the list.
So, all right, B.
And this one might be a little bit easier for you. Your top 5 athletes.
Top 5 athletes all time. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. I'm a Kobe guy through and through.
Rest in peace.
LeBron James.
Mm-hmm. Basketball so far.
I mean, those are my guys.
Yeah, I feel you.
Deion Sanders, okay. I think, and probably Bo Jackson.
Yeah,
that's
because when I think athletes, I think you gotta weigh in athleticism, not just the success. Like Tom Brady is an all-time great athlete, but he's not that athletic. So
I understand what you're saying.
If you say decorated athletes, Tom Brady's right up there. With Bill Russell and Michael Jordan.
Name probably could have played a different sport, than the one that they played. So I feel
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Some of them did.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, 3 of them did, right?
Yeah.
3 of them did. And LeBron, we know he could have played tight end in the league. First of all, I guess do you think LeBron could have played tight end in the league and been successful, or receiver?
I mean, I think receiver, he's so big. Like, I think he would have gotten killed. Like his legs would have, his knees for sure would have been done. Because nobody's hitting it. He's too tall to hit up top, so they have to hit. They have to chop that tree down every
That's
time.
What they did to Gronk.
I think he would have been better suited at tight end. But I mean, it's a whole different ball game out there now. Like I don't care how big he is now. Like it gets physical in the NBA, but it doesn't get as physical as it does in the NFL.
It's a different mentality too. I remember somebody telling me that they feel like to play football, you have to be a little crazy. Like everybody's got to be a little bit crazy to play football.
Yeah.
For sure. And he might have that in him. I mean, he was an all-state receiver in high school. So
he said he wasn't. They actually didn't let him. They didn't let him play his senior year for that reason, right? Because of the injury risk.
Too dangerous. Yeah, too dangerous. Lance, man, this has been really, really good, man. Seriously, I appreciate it. I know V appreciates it. We appreciate your voice on Twitter. Keep going, man. Obviously, you're very outspoken. I think that's very important at this point in time, that everybody kind of finds their voice. This has been, again, like I said, a great interview. Thanks for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Pilot Boys, we get on up.